Minister, I've raised this issue with you before, and it's becoming quite a crisis in many families, and I don't use that word lightly. It's not just an issue in North Dublin. Many of my colleagues across different constituencies across Dublin, indeed in Wexford and in Drogheda, tell me the same thing. A colleague of mine, John Nesbitt, in Dublin North West, Marie Sherlock in Dublin Central, my colleague Duncan Smith in Dublin Fingal, and indeed right across my own constituency of Dublin Bay North, are talking about, and indeed in Kildare, my colleague Senator Mark Wall, I think, raised it in Shannon only yesterday, the issue of access to second-level school places. Primary is obviously an issue, but second-level school places. Now, you will know that we have discussed the Admissions Act and the provision within the Admissions Act for 25% of places to be kept aside for children and grandchildren of past pupils, and that has now gone to committee stage in the Oireachtas Education Committee, and we can discuss that over and back. However, it is my analysis, or has been suggested to me, that the level of social mobility that happened around the time of the housing crash 12 years ago, 13 years ago, is part of the issue here, because a lot of families moved into areas that maybe they weren't originally from. Their children are now reaching second-level school age, and that is part of the problem. But for whatever the reason is, my office has never, ever come across the level of contact that we've had in recent months about access issues in terms of second-level schools across the north side. Now, these children have to be taught. These children have to go to second level, and we are now at the stage where there's panic creeping in. You can appreciate being in primary school for the last number of years has been difficult anyway with the pandemic. Young people want to have that security of knowing what secondary school they're going to be attending. Parents obviously want to know that too, but it is becoming an acute problem in my constituency, and I don't have answers, unfortunately, for these parents who contact my office. I suggested they go to the enrolment policy of the school. I suggest that they try and engage with the school in whatever way they possibly can, but they tell me that they're on different waiting lists for different schools. Now, I'm also told that there can be a GDPR issue sometimes in sharing data as to who is on what list, and because a number of parents may have their children on a number of different lists, and it's not always exactly obvious as to how many places are absolutely necessary for whatever cohort of young people. And of course, there's the parallel issue of the choice of patronage, because if you have been educated through Irish up until 6th class, and your choice would therefore be an Irish language medium second level school, that has its own challenges. And obviously, if you've been taught through Education Together ethos up until 6th class, you would prefer that type of schooling. Either way, constituents of mine are facing the crisis scenario of not having any notion as to where their children are going to go for first year next year in secondary school, and I'm wondering what kind of analysis your department has done on this issue across North Dublin or wider afield across the country in areas that I've already referenced, and what measures you're putting in place to address
it. Thank you, Deputy, for raising this matter. It does give me the opportunity to set out for the House the position with regard to post-primary places in North Dublin for September 2022 and onwards. In order to plan for school provision and analyse the relevant demographic data, my department divides the country into 314 school planning areas and uses a geographical information system using data from a range of sources to identify where increasing school place requirements and associated accommodation needs will arise. However, it is important to note that where local enrolment pressures emerge, it may not be as a result of lack of accommodation, but may be driven by a number of factors, individually or collectively. Duplication of applications. Pupils have applied for a place to a number of schools in the area. Or school choice. Pupils can't get a place in their preferred school, whilst there are places in other schools in the town or in the area in question. Some towns or areas have single-sex schools, and while places are available in the school, they're not available to all pupils. And then, of course, there's also the external draw with pupils coming from outside the local area. It may well be one or a combination of these factors or not. The Department is working with relevant school authorities to establish the extent of enrolment pressures. In that context, similar to the process adopted in advance of the current academic year, the Department is engaging with patron bodies, including those of schools in North Dublin, to identify particular capacity requirements for the forthcoming years which may necessitate further action to that already in train. Where it is determined that additional provision is required, the delivery of such additional provision is dependent on the particular circumstances of each case and may be provided through utilising existing unused capacity within a school or schools, extending the capacity of a school or schools, or provision of a new school or schools. Under Project Ireland 2040, the Department continues to make progress to increase the infrastructural capacity in the school sector in order to meet demographic and other demands. The capital programme details the school projects that are being progressed under Project Ireland 2040. It is expected that the enrolment pressures in North Dublin and in other areas will reduce in the short term as such planned additional capacity comes on stream and as demographic demand moves past its peak. In terms of projects, there has been significant investment under the major capital programme in the North Dublin area in recent years. Breamore ETB Balbriggan has a new school building for 1,000 pupils completed in 2018. Coláiste de Glór na Mara, also in Balbriggan, was completed in 2019 and also has accommodation for 1,000 pupils. In addition, there are 13 other major projects at post-primary level in the North Dublin area, including at Balmain, Malahide, Portmarnock, Swords, Dublin 15 and Rush, which are at various stages of the design and build process and which will greatly contribute to the supply of school places in the area. Additionally, the capital programme also provides for devolved funding for additional classrooms, including accommodation for pupils with special education needs, if required, for schools where an additional enrolment need has been identified. Included among additional accommodation projects are Dominican College, Drumcondra, Coláiste Gulig, Coolock and Santa Sabina Dominican College, Sutton. Clonturk Community College has been approved a significant amount of modular accommodation to cater for their needs. St Aidan's Whitehall has also been approved for a significant project which has been devolved to the school authorities for delivery. The Department is also engaging with school authorities at Castleknock Community College and Luttrellstown Community College in order to consider their accommodation needs. I can assure the Deputy that the Department is working intensively to ensure that there is sufficient post-primary school accommodation available across the country, including in North Dublin, to meet school place requirements in every area.
Thanks, Les Concordia. Well, can I first of all thank the Minister for her reply, and I do appreciate that both yourself, Minister, and indeed your department recognise that there is an issue. Because often, sometimes we can raise issues in this House, and we get the sense from either the Department or the Minister that, you know, this isn't really a concern. But I can see from your response, and indeed previous responses from you, that you do acknowledge that there is an issue. There is a push locally, indeed, for a new second-level school to, in that catchment area, a new Educate Together second-level school, which could actually cater for a number of primary schools of that ethos that would benefit the area, but also release some of the pressure. I noticed some of the schools that you're mentioning here have additional accommodation projects. But can I ask, in terms of this intensive work, at what point do you think you could respond back to me to the nature of this intensive work the Department is undergoing, and at what point do you feel that you could share with local deputies as to the outcome of that work, to ensure that we can then tell all of these constituents who contact us that yes, there are adequate places for your children in September. Because you can appreciate, Minister, and this is not something that anybody can take lightly, if there is insecurity or uncertainty in the family as to where a young person is going to school in September, and if it's the oldest child in the school, you can just appreciate how anxious that is. If it hasn't been resolved by this stage, it's going to dominate issues over Christmas, it goes into the new year, etc. So, while I appreciate your department are acknowledging the issue, could I get your assurance that your department will liaise with local deputies and representatives in the Dublin Bay North area as to what the results of this intensive work from the department comes up with, so that we can then relay that information to our constituents who are making contact with us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Deputy. Again, I do want to acknowledge that, as I previously outlined, in quantifying the specific requirements for September 2022, the Department is, as I've already outlined, assessing its nationwide demographic exercises to determine where additional school accommodation is needed at primary and indeed at post-primary level across the 314 school planning areas through a geographical information system. The GIS uses data from a range of sources, including information from social protection, the Department's own school enrolment databases, and much more, to identify where there are pressures for school places across the country will arise. In line with the strengthened approach in recent years, the process involves 3 specific initiatives: enhanced engagement with local authorities, which is hugely important in relation to the information on residential development, because clearly you would appreciate, Deputy, where houses go, education goes as well. Additional engagement with patron bodies in relation to their local knowledge on school place requirements, education and training boards, diocesan offices and national patron bodies such as Educate Together and Forest Patrúnachta, etc. They can also be an important source of knowledge, and this will add to the information also provided to the Department by local authorities or individual schools themselves. Utilising the information gleaned from schools under the National Inventory of School Capacity completed by individual schools last year as part of the POD or the PPOD returns process is also significant. I want to assure you that the Department will continue to engage with patron bodies in identifying specific September 2022 capacity pressure points and prioritising those pressure points going forward, and also putting in place the necessary and very specific action, because you will appreciate, Deputy, that the demands in one school are not necessarily mirrored in terms of demands in another school. And I want to assure you, Deputy, that I am very happy to engage with you in relation to specific issues that you raise in relation to your own area of concern.